Welcome to episode 5 of ADHD Chatter. This week I speak to a remarkable young woman called Sally Wynter. Sally was only 25 years old when she sold her gin company for 7 figures, only 6 months after starting the company. Wow, that's fast. However, with this huge success came a cost, and for the first time ever, Sally opens up about what really happened behind the scenes, from dealing with burnout, imposter syndrome, and low self-esteem. I learned a huge amount from Sally. She clearly knows how to manage her ADHD. This is going to be one of those episodes I'll listen to again and again and again. I'll let it speak for itself. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Hey, Sally, how are you?
Hi, Alex. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to ADHD Chatter. I think your story is fascinating, and I think there's so many places that we could start. I like to always start at the beginning with my guests and ask them a similar question, and that is, if I could speak to somebody who knew Sally as a child or at school or in your early years, what would they say Sally was like as a person?
I'd say that pretty much all my school reports were probably quite a stereotypical potential but lacks focus. And then probably in my later years, so age 14 upwards, it's just not here. Could be doing well, but just not at school. So that would probably sum it up.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, would you use the word daydreamer?
Yeah, I think I would. I was always thinking about other things or drawing in a pad, and I think I just really struggled with just the kind of boxed out curriculum that is like, you do this, then you learn that, and like I think one of the things about my mind is I'm always burning. I always want a reason and a justification for things. So when things felt pointless, I just struggled. Like if someone couldn't convince me why I had to learn that thing, then yeah, I just wasn't on board, I think. And there wasn't a load of kind of pressure at home as well to kind of keep up with homework and things like that and exams. So yeah, I kind of was allowed to get away with it to a degree, I think, as well.
Mm. It's super fascinating to me to ask this question. And what subjects were you strongest at, and what subjects were you weakest at school?
I was just weakest at anything that took dedication, to be honest. So sciences, maths, anything that I had to basically turn up and actually do the homework. I was the kind of one that I would just find a way to get around. So if there was a particularly strict maths teacher, I'd just arrange to copy someone's homework like an hour before to avoid the shit and the wrath of this scary Russian maths teacher. But like to just be able to fly by. And every time she'd write something BOD on my homework, which was benefit of doubt. Like, I know you fucking copied this. I know you're not doing well at maths, but you're just kind of getting that by. And then anything really where it was just non-traditional kind of, away from STEM subjects, art, DT, and English particularly, I think. I consider myself a good bullshitter. It's, I guess, how I would describe it. But I guess that's more, to be a bit more detailed with it, it's probably like anticipating what I feel like I'm supposed to put down on the paper and kind of be able to fly with imagination a bit. And yeah, anything I could funk, basically. And English was one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super interesting because, I mean, maths was something I was never good at. I enjoyed creativity, like storytelling. Outside of school, what drew your attention? What did get your attention?
Outside of school, I'd say I was living in a really busy flat. There was 7 of us living here, so lots of siblings. There was always people in and out. But I guess I kind of kept to myself to a degree. I would get obsessed with films. But when I got obsessed with like a film or a piece of music, I would listen to it on repeat. For example, music I would listen to on repeat for like 100 times in a row when I'd hear like a song that I really, really loved. And then I'd get this shout like, stop playing the same fucking song again and again. And then with like movies, definitely, I think movies could really capture my imagination. So, for example, especially with like more, I don't know, so Amelie would be one, the kind of French um, film, the kind of independent feeling, kind of quirky sounds and quite magical, I guess. One of the other films I got absolutely obsessed with was V for Vendetta, and I don't know if you've ever seen that film with
Oh
Hugo
yeah, I've seen
Weaving.
that. Yeah,
Um,
I love it.
but absolutely captured my mind. And I there's like a 5 minute speech where this guy only uses V words, and I basically learnt the entirety of the speech. So that was kind of my level of obsession. Like I would just dream about it, I'd think about it, and I'd just be totally captivated by a certain thing, and it would just kind of take over my life, I guess, for a few weeks or months.
Yeah, V for Vendetta is a brilliant film. I've seen it many times. I think that there'll be a lot of people relate to the listening to songs on repeat and getting obsessed with a particular film. I saw a viral bit of content a few weeks ago saying that sometimes people with ADHD listen to the same song over and over and over again, and I've certainly had comments in the past, just for example when driving, that I don't reach out and broaden my music interests. And Eminem is like my guilty pleasure, and I just have various songs of his on repeat all the time. So yeah, super relatable. Super relatable.
I think there's like a lot of energy and emotion that are channeled, and then that becomes like addictive, basically. And you want to like live that and relive that. And I feel like if you've got a racing mind, like you're in there, you're in the scene, like you're feeling like with Eminem, like you're, toughing it out in a like dangerous area or this and that, or like you're really like living the lyrics or living in that world. And yeah, I can totally relate to that. It's like instant escapism. But in a way that,
Yeah.
again, like I never thought this wasn't just normal, basically, because the whole discovery of looking at kind of symptoms or behavioral traits via the lens of ADHD is something that is really quite recent for me, to be fair.
When did the idea that you might have ADHD, when did that come into your sphere of consciousness, and when did that become apparent?
I think, like looking back, it should have been obvious a lot earlier than it was, but probably not until the last 6 to 9 months or something like that. So I actually had come back from meeting a founder with ADHD, and I went out to lunch with a friend who happens to be a medical professional, and I was saying, "Oh, I met this guy, and he's like, he's struggling with this and that, and blah blah blah, and he's gone through this process to have a ADHD diagnosis, and now has medication, and da da da." And then the friend turned around to me and was like, "Yeah, you do realize you also have ADHD." Like this was someone that's known me for like 10, 15 years as well. They were like, "Oh, without a doubt, you display all those qualities." And I was like, "What?" Like immediately you're a bit defensive. You're like, I don't think so." And then down the rabbit hole you go to, I guess, like that conversation, then beyond, like you start looking through that lens and going, "Oh shit, yeah. Oh shit, yeah, that. Oh, okay, that time when that obsessiveness, that relentlessness, that intensity that I've just thought was part of my unique personality, I guess, actually falls into this category in a way that I probably had never thought about before."
I love your phrasing as well. It's quite, you hear it quite often in terms of ADHD, people instantly go towards the negatives, but you then just said the qualities. Your friend said you show the qualities of ADHD. So that was really refreshing to hear. And I think if anyone's listening and hears you say that, then it can be really reassuring. I think there's a lot of negative messaging around ADHD out there. So I think that's really healthy framing. With the qualities of ADHD, it's clearly served you well in various aspects of your life. Where do you think it's served you well? I'm going to point towards the entrepreneurial and the business side. What aspects of it do you think has assisted you in that area?
I think certainly like the relentless determinism. And for better or for worse, that thing of having an idea, thinking this is solid, and then literally having to go and do it with any part of your life. For example, I'm doing a huge renovation on my house at the moment, and they took all the, like, basically the ceiling down, and I could see through into the attic, and I was like, I loved like the light and the space. I was like, I have to open up the ceilings. I have to do a mezzanine level with like railings.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this weird like double height little like ladder access reading nook in the
Mm,
like ceiling bit with like a window. But yeah, so it's that kind of quality, I guess, of following through, but then equally
mm,
that kind of insane energy and hyperness. I guess hyperactivity also means that once you lose interest or something, like it can just go as well. But for
mm,
example, I think for me, entrepreneurship and I guess what I now regard as ADHD energy has been 100% intertwined. When I wasn't that kid that grew up with what I regard as like, I didn't know anyone that had a business. I didn't know what an entrepreneur was this was literally a discovery in my early 20s. So really no influence at all. I remember Googling like what is an entrepreneur. So I very much started out at the beginning, and it was the idea and I guess that ADHD energy first that compelled me almost to go into it. So,
mm,
everyone watching Dragon's Den or whatever, you have an idea and you say, like, oh, but whatever, they did it with this or that, blah, blah, blah. And then, usually those ideas go kind of nowhere, or you think, oh, it wouldn't work because of so and so. But I had that for a bit, and then I had this one idea that I was just so obsessed with that it just consumed my entire mind, like a way I probably hadn't felt for quite a long time, probably since being in my teens and having those movies that would just consume my life and things like that. And I couldn't sleep, like just thinking about what this could be. Probably like my just mind was like traveling and racing, and I wasn't sleeping at all, just dreaming up like what would it be called, what would it look like. And I think a lot of that like that intensity also was because I felt like I don't know anything about this world. Like it was that particular idea was a food app, and I was just it was all consuming. And then after weeks of not sleeping, I thought, right, I need to do something about this. This is weird. This is consuming my life and my brain. And I felt almost like it was gnawing away at me because it was so intense. And that's when I decided, right, I need to find people in this space. I need to understand what this would even look like. And a few weeks later, I saw an ad in the Evening Standard about a free Founders of the Future kind of like event, it's kind of typical day of speaking. I think it was the Camden Arts Centre, lots of different speakers, and you could go along and listen and so on and so forth. And that's really where I think my entrepreneurial journey started, because I felt finally, I sat down and I met people and I was like, holy shit, I'm not alone. I'm not just a psycho. There's people like me. There's energy. It's like, I wouldn't say
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like within the normal range, but like there's people that think like me that have that kind of hyperactivity.
Mm,
And then actually off the back of that, I ended up winning a little contest that won me basically a little competition on the back of the speaker booklet that was like win mentoring for 4 hours with one of these like top business leaders or whatever. I Googled everyone, and one of them was Brent Hoberman, and founder of lastminute.com and kind of huge internet success. I won that competition. Then I had the mentoring. So from my like, I know nothing about the space, from idea to then finding my people and then having that kind of leg in of pitching my idea to someone huge in the business world was, I guess, like quite rapid. So
mm.
I think intensity, I guess, coming in a long-winded way back to your question, that quality, I think, can help you to just go from crazy polar opposites in like a short space of time.
Definitely. And hearing you talk about that obsession and that energy reminds me of back in 2010 when I started uni, lad. So I can 100% relate to that. You just become obsessed on this idea. You don't sleep. And almost, I don't know if you're the same, but you sort of have this inability to worry about it not working. I think
It
it's
has
a
to,
massive,
right?
yeah. I mean, it's not an option for it to not work.
Mm.
I mean, it might not work, for you might be in the wrong place at the wrong time, but when you're in that moment of obsession and you're staying up all night on your computer, building it and researching it, then in your mind, it's not an option for it to fail.
Mm.
And I think that determination, and like you said, I suppose ADHD energy is a new phrase, but I can definitely see it, is something that sets us apart. And it's that absence of fear, perhaps. A lot of people won't start something because they're worried about putting themselves out there, or they're worried about starting something and it not being a success. But I don't know about you, but my mind's racing so fast and just so in on it that ability to have that thought process just doesn't crop up.
Mm.
And
It's
that's
like a compulsion. That's the thing. I feel like I'm almost controlled by that compulsive energy that like I'm not in control. Someone's just wheeling me forward, like this has to happen. But in terms of, I think because I grew up with quite a low, and have still battle with, but kind of coming out the other side a little bit of low self-esteem, I certainly, unknowingly, I was hitting, so I was like, had all this energy, I had all this desire, I had all this obsession, but I was kind of hitting a wall with action. And it was actually only, so I was doing all the research, so this is like a little bit further down the line, and I was researching for my gin business, and I had this concept and it was going to be different and weird, and it was not going to look nothing like a gin, and it was going to have this CBD infusion and all of this, and I was down the rabbit hole. I was understanding the industry, I was calling up distilleries, I was getting my licenses in place, and then I just wasn't able to take that leap, that like start, like announce you're launching it, or like, and a friend, sat down with a friend who I'd met actually at that very initial kind of entrepreneurs event. And he said, why haven't you started yet? And I said, oh, because I just need to do a bit more. Like, I just need to kind of get the market down to my plan. He's like, yeah, but why haven't you started yet? Like, it's been a while. And he said, are you scared? And I realized that actually there was this deep rooted fear inside me, which was intrinsically linked to my low self-esteem, that was paralyzing me basically. So I think that was very liberating. I think once you understand that there is something holding you back, then you can start to tackle it basically. But when you don't know it's there, and your brain is very good at lying to you, like I genuinely believed I've got more stuff to do. It's not the time yet to go ahead with it, still in that research process. So I think as my confidence is growing, that's far less of an issue. But yeah, it's funny how powerful that must have been, because my kind of energy and relentlessness was so strong, but it was kind of at battle heads at that point.
you said you did stuff like you were contacting the distilleries, I think you said, and sorting out the licensing. And then your friend said, why haven't you started? Was it the sort of, you didn't want to announce it?
I think
Was
it was
that
like, yeah. So basically, with the gin, there was like 10 months. I had to obviously understand, do the product, design, the logo, the liquid, lots of trials. But then it was like, once you have a product, largely it was in concept. I hadn't produced a run. I hadn't, ordered the bottles, ordered the labels, this and that. So it was like ready to go, but needed that commitment, I guess, of, so most of everything was done basically without any money. But the one thing I had to pay for was labels, because my strategy to market without any funding, as kind of a broke recent graduate, was to essentially get pre-orders, use PR, like free marketing essentially, to get pre-orders of the product, and then use that to fund the first production run, because the first production run was like a few thousand basically. So the only thing I had to shell out for was the labels. But I think having grown up poor, and like also just having this self-esteem issue, for me, putting down that money, or like I had to put it on a credit card, a 0% credit card, but borrowing that, committing to that was the jump basically in my head. And then after that was done, I'm like, well, I thought I'd fucking do it now. I've spent the money, like I have to. I have no choice. I'm trapped. I've trapped myself. I have to move forward now. Like, but yeah, I think that was the thing. I was probably at the time like, I'll just wait later. It's very difficult.
Where do you think the low self-esteem came from?
I mean, that's quite a deep question.
That is a deep question.
I think like probably a big mixture of things, but I think probably two key things would be growing up in quite a poor household, I guess, like not having a lot, having probably a strained parental relationship. And the key thing I think was for me my trajectory changed to a degree when I got into a grammar school. Um, First in my family to do so, and I was the only poor kid basically. I was one in three, four kids in the year that was on free school meals, and everyone else was like privileged, middle class. And I like this would probably just be one example of like in year seven, like we had like a arranged. I don't know, my older sibling or something had arranged like a birthday party, like a town hall or church hall nearby in kind of Tottenham Green, which is where I grew up, and no one turned up because basically the area was too rough for the middle class darlings to attend this rough area and birthday party. So they were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, the area's not appropriate, blah blah." So yeah, I was that kid like with a couple of my like brothers, friends, and stuff there standing around. It was just an empty hall, and that was kind of devastating. So probably,
Yeah.
I think moments like that, and then being quite isolated in sense of always being, I guess, the poor kid, the kid on the outskirts, and also just not having, I think, being in my own head a lot as well, and not wanting to blend enough. I just didn't want fake relationships, I think. So the concept of I think I tried to fit in things like primary school. I was really bullied very severely. So I was like, well, that doesn't work. And then I was like, why would I want to pretend to be someone else to fit into certain cliques? And there was a lot of cliques because it was a girls' school. When like what I'd get out of it at the end would just be having strangers around me who I had to pretend to be friends with. Like, what's the point of that? The way I always understood friendship from like popular culture was, it's like that best friend, someone you can tell anything to, someone that's got your back, someone that defends you. Like that just wasn't up for grabs. So yeah, I think a mixture of things, but that probably gives like an overview, I guess.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, there's various things that happen that in my life that would probably lead to me thinking that I don't want to announce that I'm launching something new. Probably like a subconscious fear of people not turning up or not backing me. So when did you launch the CBD gin?
So yeah, about 11 months after having the idea, and it was September 2019. But I say launched. I basically did a launch. I wrote this LinkedIn post saying I've gone and done something mad, and I've launched a gin brand, and I've done it like from my bedroom, basically with a small budget, blah 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 blah. And that was honestly terrifying for me. I think like posting on socials is very like cold sweats for a lot of people, and that's 100% where I started off because I was like, I have no experience. Everyone's going to think, why the hell is she doing this? She's gonna she's like, why do you deserve to be launching something you know nothing about? I wasn't in the drinks industry. I've never worked behind a bar. So yeah, massive imposter syndrome. But I think that's probably when I got hooked, like having such a, what I was expecting was nothing, but having such a, I think the post maybe got like 16,000 impressions or something like that, which was huge considering I'd literally never posted on LinkedIn as far as I can remember. And just really supportive. Oh wow, this is amazing. Well, I didn't think what I'd done was amazing. I just kind of worked through a lot of anxiety and obviously had this dream, but no self-confidence really. I just kind of had to see it through. I had to do it because I was so obsessed with the fact I thought it was a good idea and so on. So I think I built up from that, and then actually that first LinkedIn post again. I think with low self-esteem as well, you never give yourself credit for things. So I didn't realize that anything that I'd done was an achievement. I just thought, well, I've done nothing. I've just launched. It's not a big deal. But then off the back of that, I immediately got press. A journalist reached out basically from one of the biggest trade magazines in the food and drink and went, oh wow, this is amazing. You launched on just £1,000. Like that's unheard of. Like we'd like to cover the story. And I was thinking, oh, is it? I didn't know that. I just had to launch on a tiny budget. So it basically took off from there. And then I used press and also LinkedIn to kind of drive, I guess, the pre-sales. What I had was product photos, but not the actual product. So in my product images, it was kind of basically one sample bottle I had filled with water. And I did have the official label that I'd spent on the labels on a kind of credit card. I'd taken the images at work, basically, because I was working as a producer. So I borrowed the cameraman at the end of a shoot and was like, can you just quickly take some images?
Yeah.
And then yeah, I use that to drive the kind of production costs. So I use that kind of get the cost of goods and get off the ground, which was one of the biggest hurdles, to be fair, was that big outlay for the cost of goods.
You said something really interesting a couple of minutes ago about the first time you posted. I don't know if it was the first time you ever posted on LinkedIn, but the first time you posted about the gin on LinkedIn, and it was quite rightly so a very scary moment. Did you get this feeling of you were really worried about someone criticizing you or someone writing a comment that wasn't fully supportive? Because if I was going to launch something and then make a public announcement, that would be my big anxiety.
I don't know if I've honed down on it. Anxiety and fear and all of these things are so paralyzing that I don't know if I'd like fleshed out exactly. I guess I just thought that I just didn't deserve to be on there. I didn't deserve to be posting. I didn't deserve to be doing anything. And just like people would immediately see that I wasn't credible somehow through the computer screen. And yeah, I guess, comments were being like, oh, this looks shit, or like I was very, because as much as I was compelled by the weird look of the branding, I guess I was also quite very shy and kind of terrified to put it out there because I knew people would be like, oh, this looks weird, this looks shit, this looks different in a bad way.
And obviously it was the amazing decision. I mean, well done for making that step. And it sounds like you had done a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but it sounds like that was a real pivotal moment for you personally. And when you got that positive feedback and then the PR contacted you and wanted to run the story, did the imposter syndrome get smaller, or did it get bigger, or was it stay the same?
I think it's probably a milestone of anything you do one time, it feels easy the next time. So certainly I think I'd taken some growth from that, a small bit of confidence, I suppose. Imposter syndrome probably didn't go down at that point. I mean, it was fucking weird seeing myself on an online article. I was like, what is this? How did I end up here? Why am I on a screen? Like, what? Really hard to get your head around. But yeah, no, imposter syndrome, I would say, did not go for a long time. But again, I think the only thing that enables you to push through that is that intense, hyperactive energy and obsession, basically, that just goes, right, I have all these fears, but it's happening, it's going, has to happen. Can't do anything else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's clear evidence there that you are worthy to be there when you see the engagement and then you get contacted by PR and they want to run the story, because it is amazing to have that budget and to do what you did.
Apparently.
That.
I mean, I didn't know that at the time. I know that now, I think, because the costs I was getting quoted were so high. But again, growing up with very, very little, I was like, I found it bizarre that people would pay 20 grand to have a label designed. I was like, what? This is crazy. This is weird. People should write about how weird this is, because obviously I'd just come out of uni. I had no experience in any real world. I mean, I was working a bit kind of in this film space, but other than that, no like real corporate experience, certainly no experience of what design agencies were and how expensive they can be and so on. So that's what I thought was weird. But yeah, no, it escalated really quickly as well. I think that momentum, and still today, LinkedIn and PR, I'd say, would be my kind of go-tos of kind of getting traction, getting validation, growing. Like network has been really key for me, I think, because who you know as well is very, very important, and being seen as well.
I think there'll be some people listening who hear you say these amazing things and they might think, if I did that amount in such a short period of time, or just did that amount, I would go through peaks and troughs and I would have the good times, but behind the scenes there might be burnout or other things that don't quite paint the everything's rosy picture. What happened behind the scenes that maybe halted your momentum at times or held you back?
I'm really glad you asked me this, because this is always something I want to talk about, which is like you hear someone's story and you just think, oh, it was just A, B, C, D, E, and it just fell into place. And that's 100% never the way it goes. Like I'd say in the build-up phase, it was like insane ambition that would keep me up all night, and then like crushing, like I can't do this, I'm never going to get to where I want to be, and yeah, huge peaks and troughs. And then so like the journey that was like 10-11 months to from idea to launch was actually could have been half that time, that was mired by just a lack of self-belief, of like I guess being so stressed and having these huge drops where like I couldn't focus on anything, I couldn't make decisions, I couldn't move forward, I had no momentum. And I think that's still a part, it's still a part of my life now, but very much more under control. But then like it was crazy. And I think obsessing over things so much as well, like having an introduction, then I didn't feel like I was ready, and I didn't have like my business plan wasn't quite ready, and someone had asked me to share it, and so I wouldn't reply, and then I'd be like, oh, I can't reply now because it's been 2 weeks, and just these weird mind games. When I think, especially when you're a solo entrepreneur and it was just me in the business doing everything, and you're alone, that's amplified because it's just you, and there's no one else to be like, look, this is okay, like you can do this, or like I believe in you, and not having that person to be like, I believe in you, you can do this, and probably having never had that person, it was, yeah, that made it a lot more difficult. And then I think after launch, again, just me, no money, no funding, huge burnout. I remember having a breakdown a few months after launch, and just felt like I couldn't continue because it was just like the same. They say like anxiety and excitement, they're all the same receptors in the brain. And so I had a mixture of those at all times. And I think once you're operating at that peak stress, which is supposed to be just at the moment that you're about to fucking run away or kill a tiger, like that's what that's supposed to be like. If you're operating at that 100% of the time, eventually you just crack. And I had, probably one or two in the short space of, I had probably a breakdown even before I'd launched. Like that's how much it was consuming. I was living in it. It might think from the outside, oh, you're just getting something ready, no big deal. But in those 10, 11 months, I was going through all sorts of things in my head. And at least 2 periods where I just cried all day and all night, could not get out of bed, could not look at emails, couldn't do anything. And it's amazing thinking, and so hard to convey as well, that all of this is going inside your head. So it seems like from the outside, like, what is wrong with this person? Like, but I think, you'll probably know a bit about that to a degree as well. Like, I'm sure people can relate to being in that headspace and feeling like it's especially hard to convey why you are going through.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I spoke about this before in the other episodes. Yeah. I mean, my peaks were fun, and my troughs landed me in hospital through nearly drinking too much, or definitely drinking too much. And I think it's really, thank you for being so open and for telling that side of the story, because I think it is easy for people who have had some success to only post about the positives and the tip of the iceberg, and what obviously, like, we know that the reality is often much more balanced and much more nuanced, and I think it'd be really helpful for people listening to hear that there's the good with the bad, because I think if it's just portrayed as good on social media, then that can have quite damaging effects on other people who might be experiencing the normal
it's
side of everything.
immensely tough, and I would actually not recommend doing what I would like, to a degree, not recommend doing it alone. I think like having someone, a mentor, even someone that you have to bounce off, or someone that gets your energy as well. That's what I found particularly isolating, is that people around you, especially family or people, whoever it is, they don't get it, what you're going through at all. So you get the weird looks, and it's almost worse to have someone around you like that. So someone that kind of gets you or can go, which is easier said than done, by the way. I wanted a mentor, I wanted to find one, but it's really difficult. And most people I contacted were like, yeah, for a fee. And I'd be like, I don't have a fee to give. I'm sorry. So, yeah.
When you were having those bad days and you felt that you just couldn't perhaps do anything that day, how did you pull yourself out of it? But that's not necessarily the right thing to do. But did you do anything to ensure that those bad days were mitigated? And with the self-awareness you have now, is there any advice you could give for people when they're having those bad days to mitigate them and to make them not last as long as they might otherwise?
So it's something that, as I mentioned before, I'm much better kind of dealing with now. And I think back then, probably the reason it was so bad and so extended and took me a long time to kind of recover from was beating yourself up. So like I would have a bad day, and maybe that bad day would look like doing nothing. Like my mind was racing so much I couldn't concentrate, couldn't read, I couldn't work on whatever I was working on. And then maybe binge eating, and then looking back at the day in the evening going like you've done fucking nothing, you're a disgusting pig, and then probably drinking loads and then doing the same the next day, and then it like would become many many days, like a longer period. And now I'd say very different, because I still have those bad days. Everyone has those bad days. I still have those troughs. But right now, and what I've found is actually quite recently, probably has really helped me, is being like, not every day can be a good day. Some days are just shit days, and you're gonna have them, and that's okay. And being more kind to myself and just being like, you've worked your ass off. That's okay. And I think being able to say that to yourself also comes with more self-esteem, which I've certainly grown with in time. But that means that instead of like a 4-day bender, it would just be a day or half a day, and then I don't feel bad. I forgive myself and just be like, that's fine. You need days like this. You need days where you can just take the pressure off, and just whatever you need on those days is fine.
Mm.
And that's been
Yeah.
transformational.
It's such good advice to have that, to not beat yourself up when you have these troughs. That ADHD energy is powerful, and if you haven't necessarily got the self-awareness to know that if you go all in on that energy, then it's gonna crash on the other side. And actually to know that that does happen, and when that does happen, that you haven't done anything wrong. It's
Mm.
just a natural
And you can't
response
fight it.
to the.
You can't
No, you
fight
can't
it as
fight
well.
it. No,
It's like
and you
you're
can't
fighting a
fight.
losing battle from the beginning. So why try? You're literally shafting yourself, and then you're losing every time. So
Mm,
it's a non-goer. And I like, honestly, this is easier to say than it is to implement, because I probably heard this way like years before I was able to implement it. But once you crack it, it's massively, it massively helps. Massively helps.
no, definitely. And also, it's hard to fight. I think impossible to fight the when you're in when you've got the ADHD energy and you're in that hyper focus and you're going in 1,000%. It's hard to pull yourself out of that, or impossible to pull yourself out of that. I recognize that I'm having that moment, and I'm working perhaps in an unhealthy way, but it's impossible to pull yourself out of it, I find. Do you find that when when you're in that ADHD energy moment and you want to stay up all night and you want to spend all of your time obsessing on this particular thing that's got your interest, do you find that it's impossible to pull yourself away, or with the self-awareness, are you able to not act on that and know that that's going to cause me to crash in a day or two?
I haven't cracked that bit, but if I think I'm controlling it and focusing that a lot more than I've been able to in the past. Like in the past, it's been like firing off everywhere, and I'm not sure like the ADHD energy for me comes and goes. It's pretty much like always there. It's the crashes that were probably the biggest problem, and then also being able to filter it, because I think that obsessive, that like relentless racing mind was so hard to funnel sometimes. Like it would be everywhere, and I couldn't necessarily box that into clear like thoughts and actions, and I'm getting much better at that. But I think feeling like I'm much more under in control now is also probably why um I am in two minds about whether to seek right now the formal diagnosis, because when I've met certain other people and they are really actively struggling. I feel like I am more in control, although I do think it's getting more intense as I get slightly older. But I'm not seeking medication at the moment, and I'm trying to use some of those qualities as a superpower, for business, for example. And I don't know, I'm in two minds a bit, because I feel like, should I be wasting a place in the system if I don't feel like I need to? And also, would a diagnosis change my life, how I look at it? Certainly, I think discovering the why of a lot of my behaviors and quirks, or whatever you want to call them, or troughs, See, I don't even know if that helps me knowing this. I
Mm,
don't know because I was just dealing with it as what I thought was part of my weird personality, and sometimes, trying to channel it towards good and trying to reduce the bad. And but I think for some people, having that label, having that understanding helps explain. But for me, having a formal diagnosis or knowing it is ADHD, it doesn't change anything fundamentally for me. It doesn't change how I think about it, how I react to it at the moment, anyway.
mm. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I got assessed and diagnosed, but it was a very there wasn't a big conscious thought into why I did that. And when I got the diagnosis and I got the bit of paper that said I have ADHD, there wasn't really like a big moment of clarity or understanding. Because like
How did
yourself,
it feel to have that bit of paper?
I guess it's confirmation of your suspicions, if suspicions is the right word. You feel validated. It's proof of your theory on how your brain works. So it was nice.
Hmm.
And I'm glad I got it. I'm like yourself, not medicated, and I don't intend to go down that road.
But you have the option with the diagnosis that you could if you needed it at some point.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I've actually spoken just out of curiosity to my doctor, and yeah, he suggested I go through the medical procedure to make sure that I'm fit and healthy enough to start medication if I wanted to. But I have thought about it a fair bit, and I'm at the moment just holding off.
I've heard that it makes your brain quiet, which fucking terrifies me.
Yeah, I
um,
mean, I've heard loads of things. I've heard lots of people say it changed their life. I've heard some people say that they took it and it was awful. I don't want to advocate either or for medication
hmm.
because I don't know enough about it. But
I think for some
for
it can
me
be
personally,
incredible for sure. But
mm,
I'm so scared because I think I'm lucky, really lucky to be in a place where I feel like I'm managing. And if I wasn't, it's amazing to know that there are solutions out there. But right now, where I am at, I feel like who I am is so intertwined with a lot of those qualities that I would lose, that
mm.
I wouldn't know who I would be afterwards, which I guess has always scared me with kind of medications around mental health and things like that.
It's interesting because I say I haven't medicated for medication. I probably have. I say I haven't medicated for ADHD. I probably have subconsciously medicated for AD. I probably drink too much caffeine. I've self-medicated with alcohol and other unhealthy forms of dopamine to help me get by. So I have medicated, not the official route, but
Yeah.
I've self-medicated in very unhealthy ways in the past.
Mm.
I mean, I run a lot, I exercise, but that really helps me. But I know that's not always helpful. It's like if someone says to focus on your breath work, if one more person tells me to focus on my breath work, I don't know what would happen. But
Mm.
yes, there's things that work for some people and there's things that don't work for others. Have you
Yeah.
got any coping mechanisms, things you do, strategies that you have always done or have started doing that you either did intentionally to help and to alleviate the pitfalls and to bring the strengths forward, or maybe you just have done them subconsciously and now you have a understanding of ADHD. You're like, oh, that's why I do this every day. Or is there anything you particularly you do?
Yeah, I'd say two things. First would be my inability to kind of go onto a platform like LinkedIn and then not go down the rabbit hole, or like any of the social media platforms, which are, to be fair, are literally engineered to wipe out your focus of your brain and just take you down the rabbit hole with those kind of red symbols and things. So one for me, my main platform is LinkedIn, and that's very addictive to me. Like I'll go, I need to get a contact from within the messages, and I'll open the app, and then I'm gone. I don't know why I've gone there. I have to pull myself, like, why am I on this? I have stuff to do. Like, so
Yeah.
actually, a really big thing for me has been turning off notifications because it's that little red
Mm,
circle on the app I can't stop myself from clicking on. So turning off
mm,
notifications has been just incredibly useful for me. And then discovering focus mode as well on my phone. So if I need to get something done, like I actually need to sit down, try and focus. Swiping down on my iPhone, clicking the focus mode basically just means no text, no noise, no vibrations, nothing comes up on the screen, which honestly was life changing for me in terms of productivity. And then on the other side of things, you mentioned exercise. Cycling for me is the only thing that could kind of make my brain go quiet in like a peaceful way, because I can't physically be on my phone because I'm trying not to come off the bike or get hit by a car. And then like the wind like rushes through your ears. So you can't actually, like, especially if you're out on country roads, you can't hear much apart from wind and like maybe bird song. It's just quiet. It just quiets your soul. So I found that is the one particular type of exercise that, and I think definitely you get this from things like running as well, but that's the only time when I've been having really bad episodes as well. But in the past where I've been able to get out on my bike and just feel like I can get away from my own brain.
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to exercise. I think it's just keeping your body moving and to keep doing something that doesn't really take that much mental energy. I imagine cycling.
Did you do like a marathon or something long?
Yeah, a marathon. Just things that are, I mean, they sound like hard work, but they don't take much mental energy. Just cycling or running.
You can almost zone off. I mean, there's certain bits, but I mean, I also like cycling because I get to sit down. But yeah, no, you can kind of like, you can zone out essentially. Like there's things that you're like, if you're running or cycling and there's things that you do on autopilot and you can just get used to that, and then your mind can just kind of, but I don't know, it takes the intensity out, I think, because your body's having to channel some of your energy into the physicality of that. So I don't know how it works, but it definitely works for me. And then like meditation and stuff never fucking worked for me. Like I've tried meditation a couple of times, and it's just a playground for my mind to go absolutely ballistic. Like when you tell your mind to be quiet, that's when it's like blah 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 blah. So yeah, no.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I've spoken to lots of people about meditation. I've tried it. I've sat on the floor. I've done all the different. I've gone down the YouTube rabbit hole, and like you said, I find it impossible to switch off and to focus on nothing. Like you said, you try to focus on nothing, and you suddenly you can't help yourself but focus on everything.
Like with going to sleep, for example. Like often when I just want to focus, when I want to fall asleep, that's when my mind goes absolutely ballistic.
So, just going back a bit, when you saw the newspaper articles, because I saw you posted this on LinkedIn, when you sold the gin business and you saw a big number, did you have imposter syndrome then?
100%. So this sounds kind of crazy because I've been the only person in the business. I hadn't hired anyone. I'd literally gone from start, and then the business had been acquired and it'd been just me. But I really struggled for probably well over 6 months to give myself any credit for that as well. I don't know. I just said, oh, well, it just must have been luck. Like I must have just, I just got lucky, because people don't really get that, they don't really have that break of selling a business or making a bit of money. Most startups fail. So I just thought, well, yeah, I worked really hard, but I was just lucky. And I had to, over like 6+ months, I kept saying facts to myself. Like I actually had 2 acquisition offers within a few months of launching the gin brand. Like one is one thing, but 2, that's 2 acquisition offers. People don't even get 1 most of the time. So I was like saying these facts to myself and trying to give myself credit, but just couldn't connect with it. So it took me a long time to actually go, I mean, first of all, kind of luck is when, what is it? It's like opportunity meets preparation. So I think connecting with that Seneca quote was like, it's not luck, okay? I've actually put myself in every one of those scenarios. I put myself out there. The acquisition offers came because I found templates online, and I created a press release using those. And then, I worked hard for it. I was there. I turned up. I was visible all the time. Those directly led to people going, hi, we'd like to make an offer. We'd like to have a meeting. But I think this also links into the low self-esteem thing. That took ages, probably like a long time, and still today I still don't have that completeness feeling, I guess. But yeah, a long time basically. It took me a long time to come
Mm.
to terms with that and go, you can pat yourself on the back. You are enough. You did what you wanted to do. And I think the whole journey of entrepreneurship for me also is feeling like I'm enough for myself. Like the thing I'm proud of the most is not having made lots of money. I'm proud of having put myself out there, having battled the fear, having grown in confidence, and having got to a point of self esteem where I feel like I'm worthy to be where I am most of the
Mm.
time.
No, absolutely, and it's genuinely so impressive. After you sold the business and signed the paperwork, deal done, you left the room. How did you feel after that, having gone from being super busy to, I guess, having, at least in the short term, nothing to do?
So, first of all, when I signed kind of so there was a long period of due diligence, about 6 months, which I don't think is that long in the acquisition phase, but due diligence. So there was this weird, first of all, awful period where I think first of all, when I got the initial offer, I didn't want to sell the business because I actually went onto a fundraising effort, and I was never prepared to sell because I was again so obsessed and so kind of intertwined with this business. I'd actually been on a huge journey with of kind of personal growth. And when I did come round to it, I was just like, look, I'll see where it goes. It's probably never going to happen. Um, so I kind of went through that period, and then for for 6 months, I was basically, once you get your head around that idea, like I will sell it, and there's this opportunity, because I was broke, and what I was potentially going to come out with was a life-changing amount of money. I didn't know where to sit. I mean, imagine like it's like going for a job interview and you don't know whether you really want the job, you don't know whether you've got it or not. And it's that anticipation. You're always living on the edge of like, have I, haven't I? It's like maybe see someone saying, "Oh, you might have won the lottery, but you don't know whether you have, and we might just tell you at
Mm.
any time." So that was honestly torture because I kept like your mind drifts. Like, what could I be? What could I be doing? What could I buy my dream house? So I'm like looking at houses on Rightmove, and then I was like, no, stop it, because if you go down that rabbit hole going this is going to happen and it doesn't, like that's a dark place to be, very
Mm.
dark place. So I kept saying, like, look, it's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. And then also when it did happen, a mixture of things, I guess. There's this thing that I didn't really know is like the separation anxiety, which is you're not in control. You've sold your business, you are not in control of what happens with that brand, that business, etc. But there wasn't really a lack of busyness per se, apart from this all happened in kind of lockdown ones and twos, so it was a weird time and it was all remote. But then I was working with the wider company, so it was a different kind of busy, I guess, and settling into an organization, but albeit remotely, that
Mm.
I'd probably never had before in my career, having gone into startups so early.
I've got to ask the question as well. When you got the money and you weren't broke anymore, because impulse spending is a big thing for me. A, is it for you? And if it is, what did you buy?
Well, first of all, it didn't sink in. Like I did not connect with the number in my bank account for a long time. I just didn't know what to do. So I just carried. Like when I was doing the business, I was literally as tight as you could be. I didn't buy coffees out. I bought lunch from home. If I had to buy anything out, it'd be like a £1 boot sandwich, which I'm really sad they don't do anymore. I walked everywhere. I don't think I'd ever paid for a taxi in my life. Basically, never bought an Uber, nothing like that. I'd let other people buy Ubers, but I'd never paid for anything. Um, and then, yeah, that's probably the first weird thing I started doing. I just spent on Ubers all the
Mm.
time. I'd be like, oh, it's a 10 minute, oh, like 50, like not stupid ones, like 5 minutes, but I'd be like, oh, instead of walking or taking the sweaty tube, why don't I just book a taxi? Because, like, that to me, having grown up where I grew up as well, that felt like the epitome of luxury living.
Mm.
So that was probably one of the main things, was just buying taxis all the time, and then Uber Eats and food, just delivery food all the time instead of cooking, which was a really bad habit. And then I remembered I really liked walking places, so I eventually stopped that. Obviously, the bill was very, very high. But then first big thing after obviously quite a while was buying the house,
Mm.
and kind of still, I'm what like about 2 years post exit now, and I still don't really believe I'm living the life I am living. So the house that I bought, it's a townhouse. It's 5 minutes from the Thames. It's in Zone 1 London. Like that doesn't happen for people like me. It's really weird, and I'll never stop appreciating it. And for that, I am grateful for my background, because this is special. I appreciate life every single day. I appreciate the things I've had, and I will fight for them, and I will never stop getting bored. Whereas I know people that have grown up with wealth, where it's just meh, like everything's meh, like fancy holiday, or first class travel, or house, and who cares? Like, they're just not excited by life. And in that way, I think, having grown up in the way I did, I'm grateful for having that first of all, the ambition, the desire, and the drive, but also to be able to actually be satisfied and grateful for where I am now.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting and so relevant and so accurate as well. Thank you for being so honest and sharing your story in such a vulnerable way. Just finally, I suppose, what's next for Sally? What are you up to next?
Well, in typical ADHD energy, I have like 7 spinning plates right now. Going through a 12-week like major building works on the house. Recently launched the PR training for brands, because that was so crucial for my journey, and obviously repping the bootstrapper mentality, which I'll never stop giving up on, by the way. I'll always be a bootstrapper, always counting the pennies. And then I'm looking at women's health for the next business. So pretty much I live in startups, I live and breathe them. But yeah, that's my poison.
Yeah, amazing. On to the next thing. So is that ADHD energy coming back? That's incredible. Where can people find you if they want to hear more about you or follow you on any platforms?
I'd say LinkedIn is where I'm on the most, and yeah, that would probably be the choice, LinkedIn.
Perfect. Okay, I'll put your name up on the screen here. But thanks again, Sally. Honestly,
thanks so much for having me, Alex.
Genuinely fascinating, and thanks for telling your story. I think it's genuinely going to help a lot of people. Yeah, thank you so much.
I hope so. All right, bye.